My name is Ryan Brooks. I'm 38 years old, and I've served in the United States Air Force for the last 16 years. I'm a captain stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, and until not long ago, I believed I had the perfect life. It wasn't just the medals or the crisp uniform that gave me pride. It was the structure, the clarity, the sense that everything in my world followed a plan. I lived by protocol. I thrived on discipline. My routines were tight, my goals mapped out, and every mission had a clear objective. That included the biggest mission of my life, my family. Back home in California, my wife Claire was holding things down. She was smart, organized, and fiercely independent. We'd met during a disaster relief mission in North Carolina years ago. She was a nurse. I was newly commissioned. We clicked over a shared love of service and stubbornness. After we married, Claire transitioned to civilian nursing and supported my deployments without ever complaining. At least, not to me. Then there was Ava, my little 6-year-old firecracker. Born 2 months premature but tough as nails from the moment she came into this world. She had Claire's eyes and my tendency to over-explain everything. I'd miss her for months on end while deployed, but we had our rituals. Weekly video calls. Storytime recordings I'd send. She even had a cardboard cutout of me in her room, which, honestly, weirded me out at first, but she loved it. I had just finished an 8-month rotation overseas. It was tough, long hours, high tempo, but I didn't mind. The end game was worth it. I'd planned everything for my return. I told Claire I'd be back the following week, but my orders cleared early. So I booked an earlier flight without telling her. I wanted to surprise them. More specifically, I wanted to see Ava's face when I showed up at school unannounced. That image got me through some brutal nights on base. When the cold German rain beat down on the hangars and fatigue wrapped around my bones, I'd picture her sprinting across the schoolyard, backpack bouncing, screaming daddy at the top of her lungs. That's the thing about being a military dad. You learn to bottle moments, to live inside imagined reunions, because the real ones are few and far between. I landed at LAX a day before Christmas Eve. Didn't sleep a wink on the flight. I was wired with excitement. I rented a car, drove straight to our neighborhood in San Mateo, and pulled up in front of our house around 6 a.m. The street was quiet, wet from last night's rain, and I remember sitting in the driver's seat just watching the porch light blink on and off with the wind. I didn't want to knock right away. I wanted to soak it in. My house, my family, my real life waiting behind that door. Everything felt like it was exactly where I left it. The garden looked a little overgrown, and the flagpole had lost its flag, but those were just small things. I stood on the porch with my duffel bag in one hand and my uniform stiff with the long trip. I knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. That's when the first shadow of unease crept in. Not fear, not suspicion, just off. I pulled out my phone to call Claire. No answer. Then I called again, straight to voicemail. I told myself maybe she took Ava somewhere early. Christmas shopping maybe. A doctor's appointment. Anything routine. I sat on the porch swing and waited. 15 minutes. Then 30. Then the neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stepped outside in her robe and looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "Ryan?" she asked. "You're home?" "Yeah," I said. "Just got in. Is Claire here?" She hesitated. That's when something shifted in my chest. Something cold. She looked down, then back up, her voice quieter now. "Ryan, sweetie, you should come with me." And just like that, everything I thought I knew began to blur. Mrs. Carter didn't say much on the drive. Her hands gripped the steering wheel like she was holding back a flood. I kept glancing at her, waiting for her to explain why we weren't going to my house. But she just told me gently that Ava had been sick. Really sick. When we pulled up to the hospital, my stomach dropped. I hadn't prepared myself for this. I was still in my uniform, my name tag catching the morning light like it belonged to someone else. The automatic doors opened with a mechanical whoosh, and the smell of antiseptic hit me like a wave. It was too clean, too quiet. The nurse at the front desk recognized Mrs. Carter and gave me a look I'll never forget. One of pity. She asked if I was Ava's father. I nodded, barely able to speak. She motioned for me to follow. I walked down that hallway like a man entering a battlefield blindfolded. The walls felt like they were closing in with every step. And then she opened the door to room 208. There she was. Ava lay on a small hospital bed, hooked up to more tubes and wires than I could count. Her skin was pale. Her cheeks, once round and rosy, were sunken. Her hair had thinned, little wisps sticking out from under a knitted beanie. She looked like someone had drained all the color and light from her body. My knees buckled, and I had to steady myself against the doorframe. I'd seen wounded soldiers. I'd seen men broken in ways you can't unsee. But nothing prepared me for the sight of my daughter lying there like that. Nothing. I stepped forward slowly, barely breathing. She didn't stir. Her eyes were closed, and the beeping machines were the only sound in the room. I reached out and touched her hand. It was warm, but so small, so fragile, like holding a bird you're afraid might vanish. A nurse came in behind me and whispered that Ava had been there for 3 days. Alone. She hadn't had a visitor since being admitted. I blinked hard. Wait, where's Claire? The nurse paused. She said she hadn't seen Ava's mother at all, not once. I didn't understand. Couldn't. Claire had always been present. Always the planner, the one who never missed a beat. I kept asking questions, voice rising. But the answers didn't come. Just more silence. More suffocating silence. I sat by Ava's bed for hours, holding her hand, talking to her, telling her about Germany, about the snow, about the funny way their vending machines worked. I told her I was home. I told her I wasn't going anywhere this time. But inside, I was screaming. I had been across the world while my daughter was fighting for her life. I missed the signs. I missed the calls. I missed everything. And now I was back, but I didn't even know where my wife was. My family had shattered, and I hadn't even seen the crack begin. That hospital room didn't just break me, it changed me. Forever. I stayed by Ava's bedside until visiting hours ended. The nurse told me gently that I should get some rest, but how could I? I hadn't slept in almost 2 days, and I didn't care. My mind was locked on one question that kept circling back like an echo. Where was Claire? I stepped into the hospital parking lot, the cold air cutting against my skin. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number again. No answer. I tried her work line. Straight to voicemail. I sent texts. Nothing. The sun dipped lower behind the buildings, turning the sky a bruised orange. With every call that went unanswered, my chest tightened like something inside me was collapsing. By the 10th call, I stopped trying to be rational. I wasn't the calm officer anymore. I was just a husband who couldn't find his wife while his daughter lay fighting for her life. I called her sister, who lived upstate. She hesitated before speaking. Said she thought Claire mentioned something about a conference trip. A week-long work retreat in Hawaii. My stomach dropped. Hawaii. She said the name like it was a normal sentence, but it didn't fit the world I was standing in. I ended the call and just stood there, phone pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. I opened Claire's social media. The most recent photo was from 2 days ago, her in a sun hat and sunglasses, standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The caption read, "Finally taking a break." In the reflection of her glasses, I could see a man beside her. Familiar build, familiar smile, her boss. The one she swore was just a friend from work. I remember staring at that photo until my hand started shaking. The world felt smaller, quieter, like all the sounds around me had been sucked into a void. I scrolled through the comments, co-workers, friends, heart emojis. Words like well-deserved and lucky. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Lucky. That word burned in my head. My daughter was in an ICU bed while her mother was sipping cocktails by the beach. I didn't scream, didn't throw my phone, didn't curse her name. I just sat in the car and stared through the windshield, numb. The streetlights flickered on, and for the first time in years, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I'd been trained to handle chaos, to make decisions under fire, to stay composed when everything went wrong. But this wasn't a mission I could control. This was betrayal. Quiet, personal, surgical. I thought about the times I defended her when my friends joked about distance ruining marriages. I thought about the promises we'd made in that small chapel in Texas, the words she whispered when I left for my first deployment. "I'll always wait for you." Now all I could hear was silence, the kind that follows an explosion. Except this one wasn't on a battlefield. It was in my home, in my chest, and it was still burning. That night, I drove back to the hospital. I sat by Ava again, holding her hand, watching the monitor blink like a heartbeat trying to keep me alive. I told myself not to hate her mother, not yet. But as I looked at my little girl lying there alone, all I could think was that no war had ever broken me like this. I filed for early separation from the Air Force 2 days after I saw Ava. The paperwork moved faster than I expected, but maybe someone up the chain read the notes from her doctors. Terminal diagnosis. Palliative care. Words that feel heavy even when they're printed on paper. I packed up my uniform for the last time and traded the rhythm of military life for a hospital room with a broken TV and a window that overlooked the parking garage. The first few nights were hard. Ava couldn't sleep well, and I didn't want to leave her side. I pulled the chair close to her bed, resting my arm on the edge so she could always feel me near. Sometimes I'd read to her from the same books we used back when she was 3. She couldn't always follow the story, but she liked the sound of my voice. When she was too tired to speak, she'd just squeeze my hand once for yes, twice for no. We made it into a game. I asked her silly questions. She always got the giggles when I pretended not to understand her answers. On good days, she wanted to draw. I'd set up paper and markers on the rolling tray, and she'd sketch crooked houses with huge suns above them. She always added little stick figures holding hands. One was always me, the other was her. She liked giving us matching sunglasses, said we looked cooler that way. I told her we were the coolest team in the whole hospital. She believed it, and I tried to believe it too. The nurses said Ava was calmest when I was around. I took that as a win. Some days we didn't talk much. I'd just sit there and hum a tune she liked. Sometimes I'd hum the national anthem, but slower, softer, almost like a lullaby. She'd close her eyes and smile a little, like she was dreaming of fireworks or parades. I stopped checking my email, stopped reading the news. Time outside the room didn't matter. Days blended together like colors on a wet page. Breakfast became lunch. Lights dimmed, then brightened again. The only thing that kept me grounded was her breath, the rise and fall of her chest, the gentle buzz of the monitor. Every night, before she drifted off, I'd lean in and whisper something into her ear. Sometimes it was a memory from when she was little. Sometimes it was a promise I knew I couldn't keep. And sometimes it was just "I love you." She'd whisper it back when she could. When she couldn't, she'd smile, and that was enough. I didn't think about Claire anymore. Not really. She had vanished from this world we'd built. It was just me and Ava now. No missions, no commands, no reports. Just a father and his daughter, wrapped in borrowed blankets, chasing moments that still felt like love. And in that little room, surrounded by machines and shadows, she made me feel more alive than I'd ever been. It happened just before sunrise. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet you only notice when something inside you already knows what's coming. The monitors were still humming, soft and steady, like they were trying to hold on a little longer for me. I had my chair pulled close, hand wrapped around Ava's. Her fingers barely curled around mine now, just a whisper of pressure. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her breaths had become slower, stretched out like the space between seconds. I watched her chest rise, then fall, then wait too long before rising again. I told her it was okay, that she didn't have to fight anymore, that I was proud of her. I don't know if she heard me. I like to believe she did. I like to believe something in her still felt me there, still knew that I was never going to leave her again. I counted her breaths. 1, then a pause. 2, Longer pause. Then nothing. I waited. I didn't move. I held her hand tighter, like maybe I could will her back. And then I felt it. The smallest shift. Her fingers relaxed, just slightly, and I knew. She let go. Not with drama, not with noise, just a quiet surrender. A silence that took up the whole room. I sat there staring at her face, still so soft, so calm. Like she'd fallen asleep in the middle of a dream she didn't want to wake from. I didn't cry right away. I couldn't. The pain was too still, too deep to rise to the surface. My body went cold. My heart felt like it stopped trying to beat in rhythm. All I could do was keep holding her hand, hoping it was a mistake, that she'd squeeze back one more time. But she didn't. The nurse came in eventually, her face already knowing. She didn't say much, just placed a hand on my shoulder and stepped back out. I stayed for a long time after that. Just me and my daughter and the morning light spilling in through the window like it was trying to warm something that had already gone. And in that stillness, I understood what real silence felt like. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of a voice that once made your world feel full. Claire came back a week after the funeral. I heard her car before I saw her face. She didn't knock. She just stood at the front door like someone waiting for permission to step back into a life they'd already walked out of. She looked thinner, like she hadn't been sleeping. Her eyes were swollen, her hands clenched at her sides. I opened the door without saying a word. She didn't even try to explain at first. Just looked past me, maybe expecting Ava to come running from the living room. When she didn't, the truth must have landed all over again. We sat at the kitchen table. Same one where we used to cut pancakes for Ava, fold birthday cards, argue over little things like laundry. She started talking. Said the trip wasn't what she thought it would be. That he left her the day they landed. That she tried to come back but didn't know how to face me. Her voice cracked halfway through. I listened. Every word. Then came the apology. Slow, sincere. She asked for another chance. Said we could rebuild. Start over. That we'd been through worse. But she was wrong. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw her out. I looked at her like someone I used to know. I told her I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. I didn't want my daughter's memory tied up in bitterness. Forgiveness was something I gave for me, not her. But I also told her this. Forgiveness isn't a free pass. It doesn't mean we pick up where we left off. It doesn't mean I pretend nothing happened. You don't get to abandon your child and then ask for a new beginning once the hardest part is over. You don't get to run when it's dark and come back only when the sun is out again. Claire cried harder after that. She tried to hold my hand. I let her. Just for a moment, then I pulled away. I didn't hate her. I don't think I ever did. But I couldn't love her the same. Not after the silence. Not after the ocean pictures while our daughter faded away. Some things break too deep to mend. She left quietly, this time with no promises. Just the sound of the door closing behind her. I sat in that kitchen, looking at the empty chair across from me, and for the first time since Ava passed, I felt something shift. Not peace. Not yet. But something like space. Like the room could finally breathe again, like I could. And in that silence, I repeated the words to myself, steady as a vow. Forgiveness isn't a free pass. After the dust settled and the world grew quiet again, I found myself waking up each day with nothing to report to. No uniform, no command. No child asking for waffles shaped like hearts. The silence was a different kind of war, and grief didn't follow a schedule. It just lingered, slow and sharp, in every empty corner. One afternoon, I found a small envelope tucked inside one of Ava's storybooks. The handwriting was uneven, full of bright colors and misspelled words. It was a note she'd written to me while I was still deployed. She wrote that when she got better, she wanted to help other kids. That some of them didn't have daddies who could come home, that maybe I could be theirs too, just for a little while. I read it 3 times before I could even breathe again. That note lit something in me. I didn't want her life to be just a memory we spoke about in whispers. I wanted it to do something, to move, to matter. So I started a fund called Ava's Wings. It began with just a few phone calls. Friends, veterans I served with, nurses from her hospital. I asked if they'd help me build something that could outlive us all. Now we send care packages to pediatric oncology wards across the country. We fund art supplies, books, little blankets shaped like superhero capes. Things that might not change a diagnosis but can change a day. I show up sometimes to read stories. Always the same books Ava loved. I do the silly voices she liked, even when my voice shakes. Especially then. There are days when it still hurts to breathe. When I see a little girl with pigtails and feel something tear inside me all over again. But those moments are part of the deal. Grief doesn't ask permission. It just moves in and stays as long as it wants. But I've learned that love can stay longer. Last month, the city renamed the pedestrian bridge near our old house. They called it Ava's Bridge. Kids bike across it every morning. Parents take photos there on the first day of school. I stood there on the dedication day, in full uniform, hands behind my back, staring at the plaque with her name. The air was cold, but the sun broke through the clouds just enough to warm my face. And for a moment, it felt like she was there. Maybe not in the way I wanted, but in the way I needed. In every laugh echoing across that bridge, in every footstep of a child chasing joy, in the quiet space between memory and meaning, I still whisper her name sometimes. Not out of sadness, just so the world keeps hearing it. Ava's story didn't end in that hospital room. It began there, and if I have anything to say about it, it's going to keep flying.